I was wondering what your secret was for resolving all these complex crises, and I know you are a tremendous golf player. Golf requires concentration and precision, qualities that also make for a great leader. Senegal has exceptional opportunities to offer, including in the area of tourism. So perhaps an investment could be made in a golf course in Senegal.
Let me just say that I still have faith in President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, the guy that you've just watched, inviting Trump to make Senegal his playing ground. I still have faith in him because I am persuaded that his partnership with Ousmane Sonko, the Prime Minister of Senegal, can still work. But it will only work if we tell him what we're about to tell him. This is the Pan-African show that is awakening today's generation of Africans to unite and transform Africa. My name is DJ Bokali, and I welcome you wholeheartedly to today's episode. And Donald Trump's African immigration agenda will make your heart race and will make your blood boil. Because America is a land of immigrants. Only the Native Americans originally lived in America. When Trump talks of a safe third country, he simply means that America now intends to use African countries essentially as state prisons for the migrants that America doesn't like. Just a short while ago, earlier this year, there's a US-Africa Business Summit. I believe it was in Angola. And during this summit, Trump himself is going to tell us how much money worth of deals the US actually made.
Last month, the US-Africa Business Summit had recorded an attendance record, actually, and generated $2.5 billion in new economic deals for the United States.
You got that right. $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion. That's enough money to construct most of the 752 kilometers of the electric railway line from Ethiopia to Djibouti. That $2.5 billion worth of deals that the US recently secured is enough money to construct most of that railway line. Now, I mentioned that railway line so that you can realize if Africa itself finds a way of ensuring that most of that money remains right here in Africa, why would Africa need the US, China, or any foreign entity to finance other infrastructure projects on this continent? Now, I understand that trade is between two parties. We are not saying we're not going to trade with nobody, but the current trade scenario between Africa and the US is skewed in the favor of the US. Now, when you hear Trump boasting about that $2.5 billion,
actually, and generated $2.5 billion in new economic deals for the United States.
You best believe that in the next couple of years, during his term, his goal is to ensure that he quadruples this amount, to ensure that what the US will make from Africa is going to increase many, many times over.
I was wondering what your secret was for resolving all these complex crises. And I know you are a tremendous golf player. Golf requires concentration and precision, qualities that also make for a great leader. Senegal has exceptional opportunities to offer, including in the area of tourism. So perhaps an investment could be made in a golf course in Senegal.
Let me just say that I still have faith in President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, the guy that you've just watched, inviting Trump to make Senegal his playing ground. I still have faith in him because I am persuaded that his partnership with Ousmane Sonko, the Prime Minister of Senegal, can still work. But it will only work if we tell him what we're about to tell him. Now, President Faye, don't make Senegal a playing ground for Trump. How much is that golf course gonna cost? That golf resort that you've just told Trump to come to Senegal to build. How much is that gonna cost? Let's do the math, you and I, President Faye. Let's do the math. If it's gonna cost, let's assume it will cost $1 million. Of course, it's more than that, but let's just assume it's $1 million, right? Now, 1,000 Africans, President Faye, myself included, 1,000 Africans contributing $1,000 is already $1 million. If it's gonna cost 10,000 times more than that, 1,000 times more than that, simply increase the number of African investors. President Faye, if today I get a call from you and you tell me, bonjour mon frère, DJ Bokali. Hi, my brother DJ Bokali. We need $1 million to build a golf resort. Can you mobilize 1,000 Africans to invest in that resort? Can you mobilize 10,000 Africans to invest in that resort? Mon frère, Monsieur Président, Mr. President, I will happily do that. I will happily do that. Now, if I can do that, how much more can other Africans, more influential than myself in terms of the money they have, in terms of the political power they have, in terms of the connections they have, how much more can they do? You don't need Donald Trump to build a golf resort in Senegal. You don't. And the same applies to all the other presidents in that room with Donald Trump and across the continent. All these other presidents who keep walking to America and Europe and China with a begging bowl in their hands, please come and invest. Please come and invest. I have news for you. Whoever provides the capital owns whatever investment that capital is funding. President Faye, do you now want Trump to own the golf resort right there in Dakar? Would you rather 1,000 African investors own that golf resort or Trump and his cronies own it? No, President Faye. You were elected president by the young people of Senegal. You must provide leadership of a different kind. It cannot be the same old tried, the same old boring, the same old useless kind of leadership that constantly looks to America and the West and even the East nowadays to kickstart investments. That cannot be the case, President Faye.
Another project I'd like to mention, and again, I would like to invite American investors to take part in this. It's for a digital city. We identified a space within the city of Dakar. It has a view of the sea. It's on some 40 hectares, and this is a great opportunity for American tech companies to come in and make Dakar a tech city open to Africa.
Now, you've just heard again from President Faye eloquently talking about the digital city, that he'd want America to come and invest in this digital city. And he talked of that beautiful view. Now, clearly, President Faye's, Cyril Diomaye Faye's advisors had told him that Trump's soft spot is golf and real estate. So they advised him to dwell on that. Now, I got news for you. I got news for you, President Faye. The American investors in the digital city that you beautifully describe, which I support, which I fully support, those American investors should only be mere secondary investors. But the primary investors should be Africans. I will keep hammering this point home. It is something that a number of Africans have described and debated a lot about. And at this point, I want to name check my good friend and brother Farah, a young man in Kenya, who strongly believes that we must mobilize domestic African capital for projects like that. And I fully agree. Okay, guys. Now, before I go on, I just want to thank you so much for being part of this African awakening. I want to thank you so much, everybody who watches this, whether it's for a minute or for the entire show. I thank you so much for being part of this community. Everybody who comments, even in the few instances where those comments are critical and we agree to disagree, I still thank you. I thank you so much. Let us continue ensuring that we build this community. We have to continue ensuring that we transform Africa together. Now, moving on, President Faye then went on to say something that made Trump sit upright, because that's exactly what he wanted to hear. And this is at the heart of his agenda on how America seeks to exploit Africa even much more than it already has. Here's what President Faye then said.
I will speak about the U.S. Ecological Survey, which can help assess the potential of the minerals in our country. And thanks to American companies, we've been able to discover oil and gas. Some 950 billion cubic meters of gas that we can tap into in order to support our economy. And again, here we were able to do this with an American company.
Minerals. Minerals. That is the one word that imperialists love more than life itself. Because Africa has a lot of minerals. And I'll tell you a little bit about that a bit later. Let's just look at Senegal alone. Senegal has something called the Grande Côte. The Grande Côte, the direct translation would be like the big coast. Now, all the way from Dakar, all the way up to Mauritania, there are beautiful sand dunes, amazing sand dunes that even if they didn't have any minerals, are already amazing for tourism. because they are like nothing you've ever seen. And I urge you, when you visit Senegal, to go and see that for yourself. Now, these sand dunes contain heavy minerals like zircon, minerals that are critical for electronics, extremely critical. And Senegal has them a lot of that. Senegal has that. And it's going to be Donald Trump's great joy to be able to tap into the Grand Court so that the growing appetite for electronics, especially in this era of AI, America can ride that crest. But this is what we are saying. President Faye, you don't need Donald Trump or America. You don't need Keir Starmer or Britain. You don't need Emmanuel Macron or France to tap into the wealth of the Grand Court. You don't need them. Do you know who you need, President Faye? You need the 1.5 billion Africans in the motherland. You need the 2 billion Africans in the motherland and in the diaspora. You need a small fraction of those who are more than happy to invest into that. And so we're challenging you, President Faye, as I move on from Senegal. We're challenging you, Ousmane Sonko. I have a lot of faith in you, Ousmane Sonko, and you too, President Faye. We are challenging you, do not play this investment game in the same way that Macky Sall played, in the same way that Abdoulaye Wade played. Do not play that game like that. You can work with African investors and show Africa how things can be done differently. Now, before we go on, I want us to go back again to the brains of Trump's immigration agenda. Let's go back to Stephen Miller. Now, I want you guys to hear for yourselves what Stephen Miller has to say. Let's listen in.
When it comes to immigration enforcement, now that we have achieved the mission of sealing the border, you're going to see more and more resources and priorities put into the mass deportation program. And so on a day-to-day basis, you're going to see exponentially larger numbers of illegal aliens being arrested and removed from the interior. We send planes to Angola. I mean, ICE is sending planes all over the world all the time. Anyone who came here illegally, we're finding them and we're getting them out. The American people voted for President Trump in large part to seal the border, deport the illegals, fix our immigration system so it serves America's interests, and remove the people from this country that we don't want here because they threaten our national security, our public safety, or our economic security. That is what he was elected to do. It's what the Constitution empowers him to do.
Now, within 48 hours of Donald Trump's inauguration earlier this year, a lot of these diabolic immigration ideas, a lot of these crazy white supremacist immigration ideas had already been set in motion through executive orders that Donald Trump signed within that period. Now, to understand the gravity of those immigration laws that were already set in motion that prove the thinking of Donald Trump and his administration when it comes to Africa and immigration within the African context, let us listen in to a daughter of Africa who is also a daughter of America, because you can be both. Representative Ilhan Omar had a response to this unacceptable immigration agenda.
Donald Trump has been president for 48 hours and has rolled back the clock on so much of our progress. From ending birthright citizenship, a constitutional right guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, to stopping refugee resettlement, to reinstating his failed program like Remain in Mexico. Immigrants are being persecuted, targeted, and treated like criminals.
I need you to understand the length, that the Trump administration will go to. And let me clarify at this point that we're not interfering with US domestic policy, but immigration in the US has a direct bearing on Africa, which is why it was one of the main agendas on the table when Trump met these 5 African presidents. So when we talk about this immigration in the US, immigration laws, it is because Africa is directly affected, and we're not just going to sit there watching. Stephen Miller kept digging and digging into ways of ensuring that as many immigrants as possible, amongst them Africans, never enter the United States, and those who are already there, as many as possible, can be deported. He kept digging and digging and digging. He went back all the way to 1798. Yeah, 1798. He went there and he dug up this law. He dug up this law and ensured that this law can be used to deport immigrants from the United States. That particular law gave the US president, during war, at that time with France, it gave the US president permission and powers to be able to detain and deport immigrants from countries that were deemed hostile. In that scenario, it was France. Now, I've got a question for you. Are you aware of a country that the US is at war with currently, right here in Africa? How then can that law be used to deport Africans or to deport people to Africa? How can it be used as part of this bigger puzzle, filling in this puzzle on how they are going to ensure that the United States of America is as anti-immigrant as possible, yet it is a country of immigrants. But those are the lens that Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and the entire administration are now going to ensure that people who look like me.
A new deportation flight carrying 95 Haitian nationals landed Wednesday in Cap Haitien as U.S. immigration authorities continue a wave of removals under tightened immigration enforcement.
To ensure that people who are from Mexico, people who are from countries that are not predominantly white, they are trying to kick as many of them as possible from the US, and they're doing it, they're sanitizing that process through a K clause like that one. Now, in case you missed it, the Trump administration has already banned 7 African countries, citizens from 7 African countries from entering the United States. They issued a blanket ban. The fact that the African Union never spoke to that has me completely baffled. Completely baffled. How do you just ban citizens from 7 countries from stepping into the United States? How do you do that? Countries like Chad, Equatorial Guinea, Somalia, Congo Brazzaville, 7 African countries. If you're a citizen from those 7 African countries, you cannot step into the United States thanks to that blanket ban. That's unacceptable. And that should show you what I've just told you, that this immigration agenda of Donald Trump is extremely sinister. It is diabolical. We cannot normalize it. We cannot treat it as business as usual. Why is it that out of the 10 countries that were given that blanket ban, 7 are from Africa? How now? And then in addition to that, 3 additional African countries were given a partial ban. Do you see the game that Trump is playing there? Of course, they will tell you that it is not a racist policy, they'll tell you that people from these countries have overstayed their visas, and that is informing the reason they're issuing that blanket ban. But here's the thing, Donald Trump. The people who have overstayed their visas from those countries are a teeny tiny small percentage, less than 0.5% of the citizens of these countries. Are you going to criminalize the rest of the citizens in these countries? Are you going to criminalize them because a small percentage overstayed their visas? And so we will call it for it is. It is a racist blanket ban that the people of Africa are completely rejecting. Completely. Just a short while ago, several deportees were shipped to South Sudan.
Official statement on the arrival of third country nationals and South Sudanese deported from the United States of America to South Sudan. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation wishes to provide the following statement regarding the recent arrival of third country nationals and one South Sudanese deported from the United States of America to South Sudan. On the 5th of July 2025, 8 individuals, including one South Sudanese, arrived at Juba International Airport following standard deportation procedures undertaken by the government of the United States of America. In line with its sovereign responsibilities and established procedures, the government of the Republic of South Sudan received these individuals through the appropriate national institutions. This development comes in the context of ongoing bilateral engagement between the Republic of South Sudan and the United States of America.
Initially, South Sudan refused, and then Donald Trump and his administration bullied them to accepting that. So as I speak to you today, there are deportees from these countries on the screen who have been shipped to South Sudan. Like I'm speechless, totally speechless. And one of the worst things is that that particular issue was on the agenda with these 5 presidents when they met Donald Trump at the White House. He wants to turn African countries into state prisons, into dumping grounds. Donald Trump wants to turn African countries into dumping grounds where deportees from the US can be shipped to those countries. It's unacceptable. Using that particular law, that particular approach, that policy, do not be surprised. It is now feasible that in the coming months or years, Representative Ilhan Omar can be declared as hostile to the national security, dangerous to the national security of the United States, and then they can easily ship her to South Sudan. That is feasible. And even if it never happens, by virtue of the fact that she's a famous, well-known, highly effective member of the US Congress, they will not hesitate to do that to other Somali Americans, to other Americans of African origin, African migrants in the US, even if they have citizenship. It is very much feasible that you'll begin hearing that they have now been shipped to safe third countries. Why can't they stay in the United States? We are telling all African countries again, President Paul Kagame, President Salva Kiir, William Ruto, all African presidents, John Mahama in Ghana, no African country should accept to be a dumping ground of these deportees from the United States of America, especially Africa. We cannot collude with the US in executing a policy that is completely unfair to us as a people, as a continent. We cannot do that. And so, fellow Africans, as we conclude this particular episode, I want you to remember those two pillars that are now anchoring Donald Trump's sinister African agenda. Do not forget those two pillars. Number one, immigration. Keep as many Africans as possible from stepping into the United States and kick out as many African immigrants as possible from the United States back to Africa, not even to their home countries, but to other African countries that have entered deals with the United States. Do not forget that pillar. We have to reject it, and we have rejected it completely. Pillar number two. This is crazy, guys. They want to keep as many Africans as possible from entering the US, but they want as many minerals as possible, as much money as possible, African money, African minerals, to enter the United States. And we say no to that. I will conclude by challenging the African Union and each and every African country. We now need to have a continental policy that makes it clear that if you are going to institute unfair immigration policies that will keep Africans out from the United States or any country, then do not touch our minerals. It's as simple as that. You cannot have the minerals without the people. You cannot. You just can't. So we are calling on African parliaments, the legislative bodies on this continent. We're calling on you to begin enacting laws that clarify that even at a bilateral level, if you're going to ban Kenyan citizens from visiting the US or Congolese citizens, then don't touch Kenyan tea. Don't touch Congolese minerals. Don't. We have to do that. We are not going to allow Donald Trump and his administration. We are not going to allow Stephen Miller and all other people who are thinking like him in Donald Trump's administration. We are not going to allow them to set up extremely unfair policies and then work with African presidents to actually roll out and execute those policies. The people of Africa are saying no to that. In the next episode, we're going to dig even deeper on that issue of money. How exactly does the United States intend to make as much money as possible from Africa? And what can we do as Africans to ensure that the script is different, that the story is different, and that it ends differently? Remember, the Pan-African sun is rising. There is no one in this world, not Donald Trump, not Stephen Miller, who can keep it from rising. Until the next episode, ensure that you keep awakening and let us keep uniting as we transform Africa.